Did you know your brain can process a whole visual scene in like 13 milliseconds? That is literally faster than the blink of an eye. Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're diving into something super fascinating and honestly kind of misunderstood. We're looking at how some incredibly unique minds process the visual world. It's all about the hidden architecture of human insight and figuring out why some people just seem to interact with their surroundings on this totally different, rapid-fire level.
So think about this for a sec. Have you ever walked into a crowded room or maybe stepped out into a really quiet, dense forest and suddenly felt like you were seeing something entirely different than everyone else? Like you're tuned into some hidden frequency? If you've ever felt that your perception is just unique or maybe a little out of sync with the person standing right next to you, well, you're absolutely going to want to stick around for what we're covering today.
Okay, Section 1, Rethinking Traditional Intelligence. For literally decades, society has boxed intelligence into these super rigid metrics, right? Like how fast can you crunch a complex math equation? Or how much random info can you cram into your brain the night before a test? But there's actually a completely different axis of intelligence happening in the human brain. It's this incredibly dimensional ability called spatial intuition, and it allows a really small percentage of people to actually see the world in layers. These are the folks who instantly notice intricate patterns in nature or the subtle flow of architecture, while everyone else just walks right past without a second thought.
Moving on to Section 2, Seeing the World in Layers.
You know, psychology finally has a formal name for this whole experience: Visual-Spatial Intelligence. By definition, it's a multidimensional thinking trait where you process depth, history, and spatial relationships all at the exact same time. For the longest time, people with this trait have just felt different or honestly entirely misunderstood by their peers. But cognitive science is now stepping up and explaining exactly why their brains make these rapid, wild connections that most of us wouldn't even dream of. It is quite literally a difference in neurological wiring.
So what does seeing in layers actually look like in the real world? Let's slow it down for a second. Imagine standing on a city sidewalk, craning your neck up at a massive skyscraper. Most people look up and just see, well, a tall glass and steel building. But if you have this specific spatial intuition, your brain goes through a totally different rapid-fire sequence. First off, you immediately perceive the interplay of the structural shadows cast across the facade. Then almost subconsciously, you recognize the mathematical rhythm and spacing of the windows. And at the very same time, you're observing how the building's lines interact with the natural horizon stretching out behind it. You aren't just looking at a flat 2D object. You're processing its depth, its architectural history, and its relationship to the surrounding space, literally all at once.
All right, let's look at Section 3, Decoding Cognitive Complexity. This type of intelligence operates on this incredible zoom-out, zoom-in dynamic. This isn't just about being good at reading a map or finishing a jigsaw puzzle. It's about a really profound cognitive complexity. On the macro scale, zooming out, you can easily grasp the big picture, like instantly comprehending an entire forest ecosystem. But then, on the micro scale, your brain just seamlessly zooms right in. You naturally pick up on these tiny, repeating patterns. You might notice how a single leaf's veins perfectly mimic the sprawling branches of a tree or the winding flow of a massive river. You're essentially navigating a mental map that is vastly more detailed than the average person's.
And because your brain is wired to make these constant, fluid micro-to-macro connections, you naturally solve problems in ways that just seem totally out of the box to everyone else. When you're navigating such an incredibly detailed mental map, you're bound to make connections most people simply wouldn't think of. It gives you this tremendous, though invisible, advantage when you're tackling complex, real-world scenarios.
Which brings us to Section 4, a rare cognitive gift.
Now, if you've spent a big chunk of your life feeling out of sync, or like you're operating on a totally different wavelength than your friends and family, the research points to a really fascinating conclusion. It is absolutely not a flaw. It's a high-level cognitive gift. For years, you might have felt misunderstood or frustrated that others couldn't see the rich, layered reality that is so obvious to you. But that friction, that's just the result of having this beautifully complex, highly gifted cognitive wiring.
It ultimately boils down to this. You aren't just overthinking. You are processing the world with a depth that is truly rare. Seriously, think about how many times people have told you to stop overthinking or to just keep it simple. Well, you can't, and cognitive science suggests you absolutely shouldn't. This permanently shifts the perspective away from that heavy negative label of overthinking and reveals the reality of your rare depth. You aren't doing too much. Actually, scratch that. You're simply utilizing the full capacity of your visual-spatial intelligence.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a final, provocative question. Do you see those layers in the world around you? If the cognitive architecture we've explored today resonates with you, I would absolutely love to hear about it. Please share your unique perspective in the comments below, because your specific way of seeing things is exactly what the world needs a lot more of. And if you found this deep dive valuable and want to keep exploring the hidden architecture of the human mind with us, make sure to subscribe. Until next time, keep looking deeper and keep exploring those fascinating layers.